This is Chapter 16, Rise of Totalitarianism, discussion number 5, Soviet Union's Stalin. The authoritarian dictatorship of Russia, which became the Soviet Union, was already in place at the end of World War I. Remember that Vladimir Ilyich Lenin had led the revolt during World War I and had pulled Russia out of World War I to establish the Bolshevik communism. However, after Lenin died, Joseph Stalin established his authoritarian dictatorship, which took a greater hold of the Russian, or now Soviet, economy and politics, even way more than what Lenin had established. Stalin had announced different 5-year plans in order to improve the infrastructure and industry of the United States. But this was going to be done directly and completely through the government's central command economy. The government was going to plan everything in the name of the people. The government took all private farms and turned them into collective farms where the farm owners had to surrender their land, their property, their tools to a group, and then the group of people had to work the land. They were required to produce a certain amount of food, for which all of that amount of food was then taken to the cities to feed the people. And if there wasn't enough food left for the farmers, well, that was their tough luck. So farmers ended up starving as the industrial cities having all the food taken to them. Of course, there wasn't enough food for them either, so everyone was starving. Everyone was paid for their productivity, whether they were on the farm or in the factory, no matter if they worked not or worked more. And so people figured out that since we're going to get paid, regardless of whether we do the work or not, we're going to do the bare minimum, and the productivity of the Soviet Union suffered greatly. And Joseph Stalin kept on issuing 5-year plans every year or two because they never seemed to get where the plan thought they were going to go. See, Stalin often used terror to force people to work what they were supposed to, or to force people to agree with what he was saying. If they didn't, they would be sent to the Gulag, which was forced work camps out in Siberia, after some show trials saying that these people were treasonous or disloyal to the government, and then they'd be sent out there essentially to do whatever job the Soviets had invented for them, but essentially they were sent out there to die. Russia also worked to establish Russia over all the nationalities that was in the Soviet Empire. Ukrainians, Lithuanians, Latvians, all these different territories were being dominated by the Russians, especially after World War II. But even in this point, the Russians were going around forcing everyone to speak Russian, to learn in Russian. The local leadership was going to be Russian, trying to establish their dominance of the Soviet Union. Another idea of Soviet communism, it was mandated atheism. You were not allowed to believe in God and still essentially live in the Soviet Union. If you advocated God, you essentially were sent to the Gulag as well. Artistic impression during this time period is that Stalin spent a lot of time paying a lot of people, whether it be movies or paintings, to use art as propaganda to show that communism was the solution to all of the Soviet problems, so long as people did what they were supposed to do. On the international ideas, though, the Soviets created what they called the Comintern, Communist International. And the whole point of the Communist International was to encourage communist revolutions in foreign countries. This is where Mao had come in order to learn how to overthrow China in the name of communism. But when one country actively advocates for the overthrow of your country, you're not going to trust them very much. And so the Soviet Union was not on the favorite list of most of the countries of the world, as the Soviet Union worked to subvert their national control. This concludes discussion number 5, Soviet Union's Stalin.